to happen. Whereas, you can't have too many guys on the team that write their ticket.
Right.
Letang, if he sticks around, is going to take less than he could have gotten elsewhere. That's just a fact.
Right. And the other big factor here, of course, is from an asset perspective, we don't have anybody in the system like Malkin or anybody that could hope to be like Malkin. And we've got this stable of young, swift defensemen. So that's got to factor into the thinking too.
Right. But the most unpredictable piece of all this, though, is the buyout situation. Like, there's going to be so many players bought out over, like, this summer and then next summer that you don't even really know who's available, who's not available, because you don't know who's going to buy out who. Like, we might have to buy out Paul Martin just to be able to afford to re-sign Letang and or Malkin, even if we don't want to buy out Paul Martin.
Yeah, this is when you're going to see teams use those two bullets that they have, like the Flyers. They're going to end up obviously Brizgalov's the easy one, but they're going to end up getting rid of Briere or holding on to Hartnell for another year and getting rid of him. I mean, like teams are in trouble and cap wise because it drops $7 million next season, and that's serious business.
Right.
So yeah, the market's going to change. There are going to be guys out there that maybe you hadn't anticipated being there today, but we'll see what happens.
The good news is
you could get them for a song, right? I mean, they're already going to be getting paid by another team, and there's no telling who the Penguins could get for relatively nothing.
Well, that's what the the joke already is about Brizgalov, right? The Flyers are going to waive him, and the Islanders are going to sign him for $1.5 million or whatever, and he's going to end up being a good player for him.
Sean, I know one of your big things is you like to comment on the announcing, especially the national broadcasting teams.
I can't stop myself, man.
What did you think of the NBC Sports performance tonight with Pierre Maguire in between the benches?
Oh, I bailed on it. I muted it after a while. I really have tried to not subject myself to it quite as much. Like I'll if I'm watching an NBC game, I'll try to sync it up with radio broadcasts and stuff. Like it's just gotten Pierre Maguire's in my head at this point. Honestly, like he can't say anything and have it not go over just horribly with me. I bailed today after he like in pretty short order called Dupuis a kid and Brendan Morrow like the young man from Regina, Saskatchewan or whatever. like these guys are grown ass men in their mid-30s, and he's talking about where they played junior hockey and stuff. It's honestly ridiculous. I have such a laundry list of problems with the NBC team, man. It's out of control. So I bailed on it pretty early, but I heard he almost derailed towards the end of the game.
Let me. My biggest issue with Pierre, and like at this point, the calling people adding a Y to the end of their name, like Matt becomes Matty, and like all that kind of stuff. I mean, that is almost funny at this point. Like you could really just laugh that off. But what's starting to bother me is the analysis, and I mean this like the Penguins were killing a penalty. Tampa had a power play, like I think it was in the second period, and there was one play where the Penguins like pinched on somebody on the boards and cleared it out. And Pierre Maguire goes in this whole long thing about how that's such a great adjustment by Todd Reardon and Tony Granato. Like, what a great adjustment. They made such a great adjustment. And I'm sitting there like, this is like 2 seconds before. When did Tony Granato and Todd Reardon call the guys together and say, like, look, this is like we need to fix this and adjust this? How does he know? He's making this up. He's completely making this up. Like,
yeah, he flat out makes shit up at this point. Yeah, I like whenever he comes up with one of his like little pet terms. Like he was saying strong on the puck. I remember just relentlessly a couple weeks ago. He said it, and I swear to God, I'm not exaggerating. He probably said it 3 times within 15 seconds, and that's what I do now. Whenever I hear that stuff, I'm just like, okay. See you later, and I flip over to audio to like radio broadcasts or whatever. I can't handle it. I think you brought up adding Y's to names where they shouldn't be. I think the tipping point for me with that was when he called. I said again this happened. He called Lidstrom Mickey a couple years ago.
Oh, yeah.
That's just not appropriate.
What planet is this guy from? Why are you doing this? Is this the best we can get as hockey fans and people who care about the game? Is this really the best that NBC can do? It's honestly, like I said, I could go on and on and on about this, but it's truly discouraging, and I'm at the point now where I just try to avoid it as much as I can.
Right, and I think it's a huge missed opportunity for the league because having a guy between the benches has the potential to offer a different kind of insight than you can get from an announcing crew in any other sport. I mean, maybe in basketball, you can sort of get it in basketball, like that they have the sideline reporters that are in the huddle and stuff, but they also don't report everything that they hear. And I mean, neither do the hockey guys, but like, it just sucks that you have somebody that you don't like listening to in a position where you could add so much value and make such a great broadcast if you had somebody there who was actually likable.
Oh, it's unbelievable. Whenever you find yourself saying stuff like, "Boy, I really wish Brian Engblom was here," you're in deep shit, and that's certainly that's the case with these guys, honestly. And I was thinking about this earlier. Like Doc is what he is. I'm not his biggest fan. He's a really nice guy, but I could take or leave him as a broadcaster. Olczyk, whatever. Whatever negatives Olczyk brings to the table are just dwarfed by the stuff Pierre does.
Pierre overshadows everything. I watched the game en route, which has its own set of issues. I assure you.
I'm aware. Trust me.
I don't know if you guys had this vantage point, but during the Murray Crombeen fight, they showed these two little kids behind the glass just watching in horror as Doug Murray pounded BJ Crombeen's helmet like he was like a large man making pizza, like pounding the dough.
It was whack-a-mole. He actually was like pounding down on top. Was that? I don't even know if it was Crombeen, honestly, but he was actually like hitting the top of his helmet.
Yeah, I don't know why you would challenge that man. He's like Paul Bunyan out there. I mean, the guy is like a mythological creature.
And while he was waiting to like bop Crombeen on the top of the head, he was throwing body shots. Like, it's been a long time since the Pens have had a fighter who's like throwing like if he's gonna keep leaning back, I'm just gonna like punch him in the kidneys and like wait till he comes in closer.
I remember Bob Bogner used to throw body shots. He used to hit guys in the side.
Tough guy, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I think that Murray has the potential, and probably already is, my favorite deadline acquisition, because he brings something that we just didn't have, which is like a really likable, easy to like get on board with, like his nickname and his whole personality, his whole persona on the blue line, and we just didn't have like. Orpik hits, but he's been around so long, we're all kind of bored with him, and he's not that great. But Murray's like this new guy coming in with this awesome nickname. He's enormous. His neck is like the size of an oak tree.
He looks like Fulton Reed from the Mighty Ducks. Like he actually looks like a grown-up Fulton Reed. Yeah, and like he is what he is at this point. Like a couple years ago, by any measure, he was. I mean, lights out. He was really good, but they've used him the right way. You got to temper expectations with him, I think, to an extent. But he's done what they've asked of him. He's clearing space. He's playing third pairing minutes. And he's been fine for sure.
Right, and I think he's only going to get more effective. You saw it tonight with Letang back. Letang took a little bit less than his customary minutes. I think he had 24 minutes tonight. But that knocked England down to 12 and Murray down to 16, which is much closer to where they need to be.
That's where you want those guys. That's fun. Both of them, for that matter.
So, I'll tell you, we haven't talked about Iginla at all, and he's starting to become what we were hoping he would be. I mean, that shot on the power play tonight, my goodness.
Yeah, you guys must have been happy to see that. For sure. That's been the first kind of and not that I've watched every second of every game, but that was the first kind of like vintage. He ended up not getting that goal, right?
Kunitz got it.
Yeah, okay. So they gave it to Kunitz, but that was still the first kind of vintage, a ginless snipe that I've seen at least.
Yeah, it's going to be he's going to be fine. I'm not worried about him. Like, he hasn't really clicked with perfect chemistry with Malkin. Malkin's been off his game a little bit, but they've still produced because they're just both really, really good. It's impossible for them not to do something positive.
Yeah, and Iginla, he has that. It's tough to imagine him not, kicking it into some gear that we haven't seen that from him in the last couple of years. Like once he has the carrot dangling in front of his face during the playoffs, you got to figure he's gonna hit some sort of vintage kind of level. And Morrow's been a lot better too the last couple of games.
The last couple of games, Morrow's been fantastic. And I think once those guys get to see Sid at 100% and hopefully Neil at 100%. Like, I think that carrot you said will be there, and they'll be like, "Wow, this team is pretty amazing." Like
I don't think you guys have much to worry about once as the season rolls down with those guys. The only kind of obviously, but we've all talked about it, the health issue, and Neil for that matter. I mean, God Almighty, this team more than any knows how that stuff can mushroom. So you hope. I mean, just as a hockey fan, that Neil comes back in one piece because he's missed 4 games now or whatever it's been.
So Sean,
Go ahead.
I was going to ask Sean, what do you think? The Pens now have a 5-point lead on Montreal, 6-point lead on Boston. What do you think is the most favorable and least favorable potential first-round matchup for the Pens?
I know they've beaten up on the Rangers pretty well in the regular season the last couple of years, but if I were them, I wouldn't want the Rangers because they've looked different since they've gotten Cloh, and Derek Brassard was miscast, I think, in Columbus as a top 6 center. That's just not the kind of player he is at this point in his career. But you play him on as a third line center and have that kind of forward depth that they added. They like magically kind of fix their issue. Now Gaborik could well be fantastic for the Blue Jackets, but the Rangers, man, that trade made them a lot better. So if I were the Penguins, I would cross your fingers and hope you don't see those guys.
And who would the Pens want to see?
That's a good question.
Is it? Do you think it's Ottawa? Probably just offensively, like not being able to keep up with the Pens.
They keep hanging in there. The Senators they don't score enough goals. Just period. They do a lot of other stuff well, and Craig Anderson's back, and he's really good. But Carlson's still a ways away. Spezza's still not there. The Senators when they're healthy are a good team, but as they're kind of currently constructed now, they just don't score enough goals. Despite the fact that they got Conacher and whatever, they're just not they're not deep enough to hang.
Yeah, maybe Winnipeg would be an appealing matchup if they squeak in, but it doesn't look like that.
Yeah. I mean that's and anybody would be lucky to play the Jets. I think at the top of the Eastern Conference, but I'm writing them off at this point for sure.
Listen, we're terrified. We're terrified by everybody. We're terrified whoever we play. Until we get out of the first round, we're just going to be totally on our heels.
That's the way it has to be for everybody, man. You look out west. If you're the Blackhawks, do you really want to play the Red Wings in the first round of the playoffs? No. I mean it's not the deepest league that we've seen over the last few years in the sense that the 9, 10, 11 teams in some instances are pretty weak, but the top 8 can in both conferences really can hang. So no, it's not to be trifled with really if you're anybody.
What do you think happened to the Flyers this year?
Injuries. I mean, it's a flawed roster construct to be sure, but they haven't had guys healthy for any real